Hi students, how are you doing today? So it's the beginning of the semester, and for all of my classes, I always give the same 3 or 4 articles in the first week of school because I believe in these articles wholeheartedly. So if you're in one of my other classes that we use these articles, they're probably going to sound very familiar, but that's okay. That's not a big deal. We'll get through this. Especially this article, because this article is probably, I will say this with no jokes, it's probably the second most important article after the syllabus. Yes, you should read the syllabus. I'll keep saying that. So, this article is titled as Why Sleep Matters, the Sleep Deficit, the Performance Killer. So, it's a conversation, and this article you can see came out 2006. It's almost 20 years old, or more than 20 years old, depending on when you watch this video. But nothing has changed. Nothing actually has changed at all. For me personally, sleep is a very personal thing. It's very, very important. I think that unfortunately in our nation, we have people who think they can have 5-hour energy and you'll get about 5 hours maybe. I have never tried that. Or you can drink Red Bull and you might get wings and you can fly through work or fly through your personal life. But the reality is that you will spend 1/3 of your life sleeping. And if you live to be 100 years of age, that means you will actually have slept about 33, 34 years almost, on average. So just consider that, how important sleep is. So sleep is very, very important. I can't emphasize or underemphasize how important sleep is. So students, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, if you ever need extra sleep, you just send me an email and say, I need extra sleep. I caught up on my sleep, and that's why I could not make it to your class. I will accept that. I will accept that if it is a real, true story, a real reason like that, because sleep really is that critical. Now, sleep is a stranger to many people, and many managers, as the article talks about, because the article comes from Harvard Business Review, which is all about business. But being in government is also important. For some of you, and maybe many of you, you will be working in the U.S. government at the federal, state, or local level. What that means is that it's really not off button as a government worker because you have to serve everybody. As myself, I am a public university state employee. I'm a government worker. I'm a government bureaucrat. So I serve everybody. I can't just say, I'm not going to serve students whose last names begin with an A or an F. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do A, B, C, D, everyone through A through Z. And so in that respect, actually, having good government workers who sleep, tremendously important. Sleep also affects your obesity rate. The reason why people say there's a high obesity rate in our nation is because of the fact that oftentimes people just don't get enough sleep. And I'll discuss that too. Now, why does sleep matter so much? So the article begins by talking about a car accident where a family died and crashed because the driver dozed off. And that's actually true. There's about 1.35 million accidents a year, and it's called driver fatigue. Sleep deficit, does affect those guys. And if you've ever noticed, people who say, I'm drunk, I know I can't drive, I was out drinking at the club or the bar. I never did that, and definitely not at my age I'm going to do that. But they were people that probably did stuff like that when I was in college. Not in graduate school, definitely college. And they may have had some problems. Luckily, I don't know any of my friends who got into a car accident. But it does happen, of course. But people will often say, oh, well, I'm just a little sleepy. Let me pick up a 5-hour or a Red Bull or some coffee, and I should be okay. Much as I'm drinking coffee right now. The problem is, unfortunately, that this is sort of like a superhuman myth, a Superman myth. We're not Superman. And even Superman has kryptonite. Everybody has a weakness. And our weakness as humans, to some degree, if you want to call it that, is sleep. We need sleep. It allows our brain to reprocess and refresh itself. And some of you may know this before, that it's sort of like, it's like the janitor comes to your brain when you sleep. And the janitor comes in to clean up stuff. What they found in the article, and research has shown this, is that after about 18 plus hours awake, your brain functions. The memory, the focus, your judgment, all of that decline as though you're legally drunk. So it's almost as though you had a few drinks, and you acted the way you did. Accumulated sleep deficits, of course, make things even worse. Even 5 or 6 hours per night builds up and impairs you overall. There are also physical health risks. For example, there's high blood pressure, obesity, which I mentioned before, a weakened immune system. That is actually probably something very important that I want to discuss with you guys. Oftentimes, as we go through cold and flu season, maybe COVID, if you don't get enough sleep up to the days leading prior to your infection, it means that maybe your body is more weakened, and your body therefore is more vulnerable to being attacked by the flu virus or COVID virus, which I would certainly not want any student to have. But that can happen, unfortunately. That's why I made a sort of a joke in the beginning. But the truth, it's the truth. You have to be able to get better sleep. For me, from my perspective, if you're not getting enough food, enough sleep, and nutrition, you're not going to probably do well in my class or other classes. So as I make jokes, and I'm a friendly person, I take sleep very critically. I do. I take it very seriously. So I want students to be able to get good sleep. Even a 20-minute nap, which I attest to, most days I get about a 20-minute nap in the early afternoon. Some days I'm not, and I definitely feel it those days. That's why you might need a little extra coffee. I also do admit I do take coffee in the afternoons. And as you get older, for some of your older students, especially over the age of 40, you will start to notice these changes in your body. That it does become a little bit harder, a little tougher to get deep sleep, to get enough deep sleep. What's called as sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene. So your room should be cool, it should be dark, it should be quiet. If you can use night blinds, or if you use a sleep mask, all of those things can make a difference. I use a sleep app, for example, and there's dozens of sleep apps out there. You can look online and get easily. Some of the companies like Apple and all may even offer them for free. I know some students have told me they use the Apple Watch. I don't personally own the Apple Watch. I don't use it. But I have a very close friend of mine who uses the Apple Watch. But he doesn't get very good sleep because he confesses to me that the Apple Watch sends notifications throughout the night. But he also doesn't want to take it off. So he doesn't really get deep sleep. And I, of course, keep telling him you probably need to take that watch off. You don't really need that watch at night. One thing, of course, is if you can get enough deep sleep over time, some people believe you can kind of store sleep up. That's just not true. You cannot really store sleep. You can get extra rested from a sleep deficit if you've got like 4 or 5 or 6 hours of sleep. But you're really not going to be able to like store sleep. It's not like a camel storing water. It doesn't work like that. There's other issues, such as, for example, that you could have jet lag if you're traveling between two countries. That can make you a little more irritable. There's late nights. Some of my students, they tell me they work 2 different jobs. They may work at an Amazon warehouse until early in the morning. Then they get a few hours of sleep, and then they go over and get some other job that they're doing. I personally don't think that's a good idea. I think that if you can try to stagger it and avoid it, that probably is best. I also know some of our students, they may travel an hour, hour and a half one way to campus, which that can become quite a lot in terms of sleep and your sleep hygiene. That's why I always give students a blanket excuse in that sense, because I believe so strongly in deep sleep. And I'm not the only one, and I know there are other professors out there. So sleep is very critical. You have to consider that very honestly when you're taking classes with me. I will ask you if you're getting enough sleep. I'm allowed to ask you that. So it's not personal. It's just school. It takes a little time. So I think some of you probably know this, but it's important to go over this one more time. Some of you may already notice this. When you get up in the morning, you may be a little bit groggy. I know in the mornings when I get up, usually around 6:30 in the morning, I wake up. I go to bed around 10:30, 11 most nights. I have to splash cold water on my face. Some students don't like doing that. But you don't like doing that because actually that works. And if you can get through your day by having a cold shower or a cold slap in the face with water, that's probably the worst part of your day, actually, that you just got to hump over. So you should definitely try that. It does help to wake you up, but it usually takes you about an hour, 2 hours. For me, I figured out it takes me at least an hour to fully wake up, my brain to fully wake up. So I always recommend students consider this. Don't answer any emails, don't answer any texts, no matter how tempted you may be, because your brain is not fully awake. And that also goes for late night. And it also goes for late night shopping. There are studies that show, for example, on eBay and possibly Amazon, I assume, that people tend to spend more between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. because they're not really fully awake. They'll order something, and a few days later realize, did I really order that? I can't believe I did that. I have never done that personally. I want to be very clear about that. But I have known people who've done that. So you may want to reconsider, and that's again why sleep is so important. They also talk about in the article that how much fatigue, sleep fatigue, it harms you in many ways. It exacerbates something known as decision fatigue. In psychology, decision fatigue is when your brain has just so many decisions, it basically shuts down. And it cannot make all decisions. And so it makes bad decisions. And if you notice it, bad decisions generally tend to happen very late at night. And I think if you're a college student watching this, or a graduate student, you probably know what late at night in a college student means making bad decisions. There's never any good reason why you're taking $500 out of an ATM at 3 o'clock in the morning, as Chris Rock has said. It's never a good reason. It's always a bad reason. So that's why late night decision making is bad. So your brain, of course, leads to very bad decisions, leads to a lot of errors in judgment, errors in thinking. You didn't see the traffic light in time when you're driving back late at night, for example, or really early in the morning. It also leads to accidents. For example, like doctors can make accidents late at night or very early in the morning when they're doing surgery. Managers, late at night, you go to a fast food place or something, they put the wrong order in. Well, that's because their brain needs more sleep. Also, of course, drivers. If you're an Uber driver, a Lyft driver, something like that, late at night, you're going to probably make some mistakes. It's going to happen. It's because your brain, our brains are not perfect. They're just not. We have biases and prejudices and fatigue. It happens. Anger is a big problem also. If you notice, most late night accidents are either alcohol fueled or anger fueled. They talk about road rage. It generally means that person has not got enough good sleep, actually. And of course, in my personal opinion, sending them to prison or jail, they're probably not going to get good sleep anyway, actually. So you're actually making the problem much worse, which if you think about it, is what actually could maybe cause even more problems in our society for criminals coming out who haven't had good sleep in prison or jail, and they come out and they really are sort of damaged. One study shows, for example, that there's a ratio of 7 to 1 years in prison that you age. So, for example, if you're 20 years old outside in the real world, but you go to prison at 20, within a year you're going to be actually 27, while the other person outside in the real world is 20, because the stress is that much. That's why prison is a horrible place. There's a lot of policy recommendations they talk about in the article. Obviously, getting better sleep, limit your work shifts to 12 to 16 hours. Some of you may have friends or family members who are truck drivers. This is a big thing among truck circles, that they need to get deep sleep and to be able to, refresh themselves. That's why they often take breaks, because they have mandated breaks. They have to do that. It is really important, and I can't emphasize more as we wind up with this article. You can only push off deep sleep for so long. So as I suggested, and I'll suggest it over again right now, earlier I did, that you got to have at least 20 minutes a day, if you can, about sleep. Even 15 or 20 minutes. If you do some research shows, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but some research does show that if you can get 15 to 20 minutes while you lie on the floor with your legs up against a wall or a door, you, like in an L sort of like position, you may be able to get better sleep. For some reason, maybe the blood rushes to your head. There's some theory about that because the blood flows down. I'm not sure if that's entirely true. I have never really tried this technique, but some people swear by it. Another trick that friends of mine who are doctors, and they work in the ER room, and have friends who've been in medical school. This is a very common medical school trick I'm going to teach students about to tell them. But again, it only works short term. It's not something that you can use forever. Is by able to drink a small amount of caffeine, maybe 6 to 8 milliliters, which is a small cup of coffee, and then you immediately try to go to sleep for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And what that means is that caffeine rushes into your bloodstream much faster. And so when you wake up, you are, for a short period of time, for a few hours, you are much more energized. So they're medical students. Med students work long hours. If they're doing residency, it takes a lot out of them. They do tricks like this to stay awake so that they can focus harder. But it only works for short term. It's not something you can do forever. After all, we're not AI. We're humans. We will make mistakes and errors. In conclusion, I again, it's a luxury. Sorry, excuse me. Sleep is not a luxury. It's requirement. You have to have it. Last thing I'll say is, as I mentioned earlier, make sure you have a cool, dark place to get sleep. Make sure you have fresh sheets. If you can, always try to straighten out your sheets in the morning. Never go to bed with ruffled sheets. If you do, you will not get good sleep because those ruffled sheets will poke at you and your skin and your body. It will not be comfortable. So even if you don't have a great mattress, I personally recommend like a Serta mattress or Tempur-Pedic, which is what I sleep on. And I know they're quite expensive, but you can do monthly payment plans, so they're manageable. But those mattresses are very, very good. They are superb. 6 to 8 inches, if you can get a Tempur-Pedic foam, which is what the astronauts sleep on, there is a difference why it's like that. And they usually will last for 20 years, and they cost around $2,000, maybe $3,000. But like I mentioned, when I bought mine, it was a 0% interest for about 3 years. So it was very manageable. If you can, see if you can get something like that with payment plans that can stretch out. If you can't, the other suggestion I have is that my wife looked into and that we do have is buying through Costco. Costco offers sometimes very good mattresses for cheaper price, but almost at the same level of quality. Because that also makes a huge difference, is what type of mattress you sleep on, which the article does not really mention, but I'm mentioning it to you. So try to get that if you can, because this is an investment. This is not an emergency thing. This is an investment. It's a requirement. Well, that's all for today. I want to thank you again for listening, and I hope I have been able to help you out to get better sleep. Because if you start out the semester getting good sleep, and you can push yourself harder, faster, longer, well, you may be on your way to becoming superhuman. Maybe. But even Superman has kryptonite, so you can't really be Superman. But that's also okay. We're going to work on that.